Watch this vidcast or I'll gouge your eyes out.
Welcome back, Horror Hounds, to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera. Today we have an interview with the writer and director of Murder in the Woods, currently playing at drive-in theaters.
Horror Show exclusive.
So I would like to welcome to the podcast YELYNA de Leon and Luis Iga. These two are the writer and director of Murder in the Woods, the first all-Latino slasher film in the United States. So how are you two doing today?
We're good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So before we get started on everything, how are you handling the lockdown situation, the quarantine?
I mean, for me, because I'm also distributing the movie, it's been, I've been pretty busy. So it's in a way, I've been blessed to have this like so intense project because I'm literally in front of my computer almost 24/7. I'm running 3 computers and a server right now just to, get all the deliverables done, get all the graphics done, and all the marketing campaigns and social media, and working with the PR team and our social media manager to, so we can deliver everything. So for me, it's actually been not much of a difference on my life because I always work from home. What I miss is the gym. That's what my only time outside was, going to the gym. Because I'm here all the time at home, it's hard to work out at home. So, but right now I don't even have time to do that. So for me, like I said, I've been blessed and to have this project, be out there in drive-ins. So I feel very lucky and blessed. Thank you.
So you must have just finished it before the lockdown, right?
Excuse me?
You must have just finished it before the lockdown, right?
Well, no, this movie, we did the festival route and everything, but we had a strategy to go into theaters before COVID. We were going to go on a wider release, and then COVID happened. So then we had to pull back that idea, and we were just going to release digitally. And however, with the situation of the drive-ins, and how this is such a perfect combination between the throwback slasher and drive-ins being a throwback way to watch movies, we thought it was a good idea to do that. So that's what we ended up pushing this in the last, so that's why it's been so hectic and so busy, because we weren't planning on it, and then we had to push our plan 8 weeks before we launched on digital. So luckily, because we already had a theatrical plan, I had a lot of the elements done, but again, it's been just like a lot of pushing, making sure the movie is that we're already in the marketplace and people know it's playing in the local theaters and drive-ins. So it's been quite hectic in a good way. I love what I do, so for me this is not work. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect.
It's in over 30 drive-ins and theaters across the country, and they're adding more almost every day. And then for locals that are around in our area, LA area, go to the Mission Tiki Drive-In. It's a really cool place to watch movies, and it's Murder in the Woods is playing there. So
YELYNA, where did you grow up at?
I actually am from the south side of Chicago, which is where I am right now currently. I'm here because we're having some screenings actually at the Imagine Theater in Frankfurt. So I wanted to make sure that I gave it a local push here because it's really great to have a movie to bring back home. So I'm here right now. I don't know if you know anything about the south side of Chicago, but there's a big Mexican-American community there, and that's where I grew up. So there's a lot of Chicago in this movie, some references, because I like to throw that out there. But I've been in LA for a long time now, just working. Luis and I are both producers on this film. So back to your question, we've been working indoors. I feel like Judy Jetson right now, because as producers, we've had to push this movie and work, as the writer, I'm writing all the copy, everything that's going out, to social media and things like that. And it is, I want to say, up to almost 40 theaters. So there are cities all over the country. So we've been nonstop, working on this. And we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about it and let everybody know, because we are an indie film. We are not a big studio film. And right now we're up against some really big movies that are coming out that have really big budgets. But we did this because we love it. We love horror films. Both Luis and I, we love the throwbacks, and that was what we wanted to do. And we also wanted to make sure that we can highlight Latinx and multicultural casts in lead roles that are not stereotypical. So these are all archetypes that we've seen, in movies, but this is really like the movie that when I was growing up in Chicago, I wished I would have seen. I would have had some representation up there. So that was really like what our goal was to make sure that we can do a throwback film that just happened to have Latinx cast in lead roles, to show that, look, Hollywood, we can do this too. And we did it.
Well, what I liked about the movie is that I'm Mexican American myself, and Mike, we both are from Whittier, which is a big Mexican American community. We're both horror lovers, obviously, which is why we're doing this podcast. I'm a big fan of slasher movies, but almost every slasher movie I've seen, the characters are usually almost all white. They might throw in, I don't know, somebody else, like a black character.
And they die first, right?
Yeah,
we know that.
Die first. It was refreshing to see this type of film and the type of archetypes that I'm used to, but with people that I know, with people that I grew up around. And I wanted to thank you for that, because it actually felt like, for once, the movie was populated by the characters, by people that I could have easily have known growing up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So good to hear. It makes it worth us working as hard as we are, right, Luis?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially now, like in metropolitan areas like LA, like you said, all LA, New York, Chicago. I mean, if you go to college, if you go to school, that's what you see. You see everything. It's a great diversity mix that, so that's why we wanted this movie to be real to what's going on in a lot of parts of this country.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to pointing that out, we really appreciate it, because that's why we did this, right? So when we did the festival run in Chicago and here at the Chinese Theater, the Festival de Guadalajara here in LA, we had a lot of Latinos and people of color come to us, and just seeing their eyes bright when they saw the representation on the screen in non-stereotypical roles, like they're not the maid, they're not the cholo, they're not the drug dealer. They were very, you could see in their eyes like the possibilities, like the things that they never thought they could do.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, in our community, like if you're an artist, if you're a filmmaker, for our parents, that's not like a real job. It's not like, you have to go get real education. You got to be an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer. I was lucky that my parents always supported my artistic side. So I'm one of the few Latinos that was lucky. And my father always, told me, as long as you're happy, you got to be happy. Whatever you do, you're gonna have to do for the rest of your life. So be happy. Money is not important. It's about being happy, and money cannot buy happiness. So what you do will make you happy. So yeah, so I'm very blessed that my parents always supported me in my artistic endeavors.
So this is a question for Luis. You studied at the School of Cinematic Arts at USC. What would you say is the most valuable aspect of the learning experience at USC that you carried over into your filmmaking?
I would say, everything. That's where Yel and I met. We both did the MFA program there, and we were one of the few Latinos there. But everything. I was one of my mentors there was John Watson. He produced Backdraft. He produced Robin Hood, the original Robin Hood. So he's done a lot of big movies. Also Gail Katz, Todd Robinson, Mary Lou Belli. Like I was surrounded by people that have made big movies, and all their advice. I did this production called 546, and they have a very limited budget, and we took a period piece that happened in Romania in 1941. Is Holocaust story. It's based on a true story, and everybody was telling us that there's no way we could make this without budget in LA. And we did it. You know, we were able to replicate Romania 1942 with a very limited budget. And actually, that location where we shot that short is where we shot Murder in the Woods.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
It was
cool.
such a great location, right? And you know, I mean, it's for me USC. Yeah, I mean, I've had marketing experience and fine arts experience, however, which have helped tremendously in the distribution and the look of the movie. However, the actual production and getting things done, the education at USC, especially 546. And all my faculty and that I'm still in touch with, and they're very supportive, was invaluable. The access to the agencies, to the access to the executives, it's been for me invaluable.
I have a question for YELYNA. You've acted on shows like Will and Grace, Ray Donovan, and A Better Life. Did you start off wanting to be an actress or a writer first, or do you feel that these two occupations went hand in hand?
To be honest with you, I started acting and writing at the same time as a child. So it's something that I've always loved. It's something I've had a passion for. I studied theater in Chicago at the Performing Arts at Curie High School. So I was a theater major. And my junior year, I was able to write a 3-act musical and star in it as well, which was inspired by Selena. She was one of the very few people that I had to look up to. So I honestly have done both. I will say that as an actor, one of the main reasons why when Luis and I were doing this, we were brainstorming what we wanted to do. We wanted to write really good. I wanted to make sure that I wrote a really good role for any person of color to step into, because a lot of the roles that I've not just auditioned for, but have been in, they've been stereotypical. And that's something that like Hollywood sees as a certain way, right? I always have some kind of accent, whatever accent that may be. They always want it stronger. They always ask for it stronger. Or sometimes I have to speak Spanish, whether it's broken English. So all those stereotypes, playing cholas and stuff. I mean, yes, it's work. Those roles are not going away until we actually get people of color in power positions, and we get them in there as writers, directors, behind the scenes producers, and just get them in real power positions where they can greenlight stuff. And that was one thing that, we were tired of waiting. I've been in this career for a long time, and I'm like, you know what? We're just going to make our own thing. And that's what we did. So it's one of those things where it's a dream come true. It's a long vision in the making that I've been working on for a very long time. And, it's finally here. So, so I'm very happy to be able to provide roles for up and coming stars, and also, to be able to work with awesome veterans like DANNY Trejo and Soledad St. Hilaire, Rolando Molina, Kirk Cáceres. These are all amazing actors that I'm just so blessed and grateful to be able to, have in the film.
So how did the collaboration between you two start? When you were writing the script, did you always know that you were going to direct it, or was this always a plan together?
So we worked in a different we met at USC, and I had a project that I really wanted to make. So I met YELYNA at a mixer, and then we started talking about it. And she had at the time it was a true story about domestic violence, and it's a story that we really wanted to tell, knowing people in that world. So that's how we started our relationship on that project. However, when we were going out to investors, we needed a lot more money to make that happen. So we
wrote it, and I wrote the script. It was an anti-domestic violence thriller. Like Luis did all the pre-production work. Everything was ready to go. We started packaging, attaching people. So it was one of those things where it's like we're ready to go, but like he said, it was a much higher budget.
So we had to. So anyway, so one of my investor, one of the executive producers on Murder in the Woods, he was like, okay, I like your passion, I like your drive, so do you have another movie you can make for less? Right? And I was like, yeah, I got this awesome slasher. So, which we didn't.
We didn't, but then we did.
Then we did.
I better come up with one.
Yeah, so then literally, like, it sounds cliche, but it literally, that's how it happened. Yel and I met at a Starbucks, and we grabbed a napkin, and we're like, okay, we started putting our resources together. I was like, I have these great locations. Yel was like, I know all these actors. And then we started like developing it, putting, and then we started like doing the beats and everything. And then YELYNA went out and write it. And then, and then we did the development on it. And it was a pretty quick turnaround because this happened in this happened in November, and we started shooting in February.
So right after we graduated, it was like, all right, we're making a movie.
So it was pretty hectic, and again, it's so I guess this price. I mean, again, when you're always in the indie world where you're always fighting for resources and doing things, at a lower budget, it's always about you got to go. I mean, whenever the opportunity arises, you have to go and take it. You don't have the luxury of thinking a lot of times. So we ended up just running with it, and the investor came through, and and then we shot it, and it's been a long process, like any indie film, to finishing funds and then the festivals, we did very well. We sold out, the Chinese theater twice, one for the Guadalajara Film Festival and the other one for the Skins, LA Skins Film Festival. And then we did the same for Chicago. We sold out Saturday night and a Monday night in Chicago, Latino.
Downtown, yeah. But we went to Denver. I mean, it was very well received. And it was just awesome to be able to take the film out and see like people coming out. I'm like, we sold out in 24 hours. So that was really awesome.
So, YELYNA, I wanted to ask a little bit about your writing process. We talked about how real these characters are. So how do you approach creating these characters? Do you already have an idea of what all the characters are going to be before you sit down to write, or what's your process like?
I was very lucky to have some really amazing mentors, like Luis was mentioning, some of them at USC. So they really taught me story structure, the tropes for different genres, because I actually it was the production program, but I got to write my way out of USC. That was one of the things that you can do. So I was very well versed in story structure. So my goal is always to make sure that I have a structurally sound movie. But this one I wanted to make sure it was a fun movie. So I was like, okay, what are the archetypes? And honestly, it was so fun to think about, like, who would I want to kill and how would I want to kill them in the slasher world, right? Because, I mean, we've seen people die in slasher films a lot, but it was really one of those things where I was like, okay, let me think about, let's see, can we think about some ex-boyfriends? I don't know. Who can we think about? That was a fun process. And then just thinking about people, like I always have people's voices, things that they've said to me, just different qualities about them, whether it's people from high school or college or just, people in general that have like stuck out in my mind for a reason. One question that I get asked is like, who would you be if you were one of these characters in your slasher? And so my answer is I'm a little bit of all of them. So I'm a little bit of the three lead girls because they're archetypes, but I'm, well-rounded character. So I'm a little bit of all three of them. And I really just enjoy the character development and, making sure that they have an arc, making sure that they all have a beginning, middle, end, because especially for actors of people of color, especially women, you get 3 lines here, 2 lines there, 5 lines there. And with this one, I wanted to make sure that each of those characters had a, story structure, and they had different qualities and that they were 3-dimensional. So it's really the writing process is really me going through and thinking of all the people that have, done me wrong and all the people that have, been good to me. And that's a really fun process. I will say that.
So this question is for both of you. What were some of your influences in making this film, both in the writing and in the directing process? Either one of you could start.
Ladies first.
Oh, Luis. Well, for both of us, we love I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, Friday the 13th. When I was a kid, believe it or not, my grandmother, I always say this movie's a love letter to my grandmother because she loved horror films. Whenever I was home at night, she would tell me bedtime stories, and literally we would be watching whether it was The Twilight Zone, old school, or Friday the 13th, the TV show, and every week it was something, same thing with like Murder, She Wrote. So I love like murder mysteries. I love the whodunits. That was a big influence that my grandmother, actually would be putting on television. And the same thing when we would be taking the Greyhound bus from Chicago to Mexico, we would have to cross Texas, which was like 20 hours on the Greyhound bus. And late at night to put me to sleep, she would tell me stories about La Llorona, Los Duendes, all kinds of, the Chupacabra, all kinds of crazy stories. But she would tell them to me like it happened to her. So she would be like, and one night, I estaba bailando con el diablo. And I'm like, what? You were dancing with the devil? Oh my God. You know, so I believe these things, right? So she would tell me all these stories, and they always had a moral somewhere, somehow, like, you know, there's something to be learned about these stories. And that was a really big influence for me. But I know that Luis, like, we love all those, the same type of movies. So when we were like, let's do a slasher, and especially because I love comedy too. That's one thing that I will say. There's, you know, some comedic elements in there as well, because, you know, I mean, you're going to be watching the movie like this, you know, and sometimes people are too scared to watch scary movies, so I have to give them that relief. And I also love when you're at the theater. I know people get annoyed, but I love it. And you're screaming at the screen, and you're like, "Don't do that!" You know.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make a fun movie like that, where you can actually like talk to the characters and connect with them, and scream at them if you want to, whether it's, you know, at the drive-in, in your car, or at home when you're watching, you know, the VOD. Because I feel like that's a really fun process. It's a very fun thing to be involved with these characters and really feel like you can relate to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before you go on, I just wanted to mention something. Like some of the stories that you hear growing up, like La Llorona. These are all stories that my grandma didn't tell, because my grandma doesn't like horror, but her sister, my tia, she used to always tell stories about how she saw the devil in the in the bathroom at night. La Llorona, just different scary stories. So I could relate a lot to those characters. I really like that element.
I mean, that's how they kept you in check, right? Because
Yeah.
they're like, oh, if you don't
The
do this,
duendes are coming for
Llorona,
you.
los duendes. They're like, oh, okay, I'll do it. Like,
You talk back. If you talk back, the devil's gonna come visit you at night or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You gotta eat your vegetables, otherwise those duendes are gonna feed you at night. And I'm like, okay, I'll eat everything.
It's
So, yeah,
So-
he was, you know, Friday the 13th, you know, Carpenter, you know, I mean, he was also a USC alum, and, you know, it was all those movies. And then, you know, even the more gruesome ones, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes.
The Hills Have Eyes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was some awesome stuff. Even The Strangers, you know, was also an inspiration for me. And obviously the biggest bulk is all the 90s slashers, you know, all the Screams, all the I Know What to Do Last Summer, because that's the one that I related to, right? So as a young, you know, teenager, young adult, I was, you know, falling in love with this, you know, with the actresses and, you know, in the movies, and, you know, develop crush for them. And then you would have, like Yel says, like this comedy in it, not always tense. So horror, like spiritual horror, is like, for me, it's not a lot. I mean, I like it, but it's like you're always tense.
Mhm.
But with slashers, you get both worlds. You get to laugh, you get to have fun, and then you get to get scared. And then and then with the mystery type of that this movie has, a mystery element. It's also like, you know, who's behind this whole thing, right? So I think, you know, those three are one of my favorite three elements in the movie, right? Guessing who is it, what's causing this, then the comedy of it, and also the scare jumps and being scared. And, you know, and then we did a lot of great things in the movie that is the type of movie that you have to watch multiple times to get it.
It's an
And
homage to a lot of them.
Yeah.
You'll see The Shining in there. I mean, even when I was writing, I was thinking of Kathy Bates and Misery. I mean, all those movies, you know, somebody asked me, they had a list. They're like, I see all these. Is this an homage to this, that? And I was like, oh, wow, someone did their homework. Yes, actually it is. You know, because those were all movies that we loved. And so that was really our goal. It was like, let's throw it back and let's do a movie like that. And
then once we go out on DVD, in Blu-ray, once we go out on digital and all the platforms, we can have like a spoiler session if you want, and we can tell you more about where things came from and how we challenged the genre and how we did things different that a lot of people haven't caught up yet because they only saw it once. And there's many things, many things.
Yes,
So-
you watch it.
so- Luis, as we all know, each film comes with its own challenges. So what's the most challenging aspects of directing a slasher film in particular?
I think the challenging thing is when you want to do practical effects, right? I love practical. I grew up doing my own makeup for Halloween, like the bullets, and, you know, I've always loved to play with like fake blood, and that's part of my artist in me. So I love like, you know, I've always, and even though slashers are scary, and they're the most fun to shoot just because, you know, everything goes wrong, right? So the blood's supposed to go this way, it goes the other way, and it hits the lens of the camera. And, you know, and then when you're in indie, you don't have that many changes of clothes, right? So you have to make it work. You only have one shot. You only have two shots, you know, so that's the challenging part when you want to do practical effects that I think, again, what got me into movies at the beginning when I was a little kid was the make-believe, the movie magic, that, you know, the worlds that, you know, that George Lucas created in Star Wars, or the Spielberg, the JOSE, the, you know, so those, it's like, how can I make something not real be real, right? So what really got me into this was special effects, like blowing up stuff. When I was a kid, I would used to go to the corner store. I grew up in Mexico, so you could do that at the time. I would just literally buy fireworks. They would sell them to me. I was like 7, 8 years old. And I would play with my G.I. Joes, and I would recreate scenes from like action movies that I would see, and I would blow up my G.I. Joes. There was a pile of dirt because they were building a house next to mine, and with the rain, it would get stuck. So I would use my mom's gardening tools, and I would create caves, you know, to play with my G.I. Joes in the car, and then I would create lines of powder that would light up, and it would go, and then would, like, you know, they would fall. So for me, that was what. And then I would grab my father's camera and I would record it, but they didn't know I was doing this. So I would go watch it, and then I'll have to erase it, and then put the camera in its place. So for me, practical effects is, you know, now with the 3D world and the special effects world, I also enjoy. And a lot of, you know, I was also the visual effects supervisor, so I was working with another great visual artist, and so it's fun. But I mean, for me, just practical effects are the most fun. But again, to have them on set when you have a limited time, they're the most challenging. You know, I'd rather use like real, you know, real bullet hits instead of using, you know, digital ones and things like that. So that's I think the challenge of horror in a low budget is, you know, that you can only shoot something sometimes because everything is gonna get dirty. You know, you're gonna splatter the whole floor, and then you have to clean it up, and then, you know, so that's, for me, that's the challenge.
I think the movie had a good mix of CGI and practical effects, using practical effects whenever possible. I wanted to get into something else, though. This is more of the casting of the movie. One of the cast members is Chelsea Rendon. She's actually on a show that I'm a really big fan of called Vida that just ended on Stars this year, and she was on Showtime's Shameless recently. She's been been blowing up on the scene a lot. Was she already a part of Vida when you casted her, or how did you get her?
So because we are an indie film, I had to be the casting director of the movie.
Oh, okay.
And I have known Chelsea since she was a kid. So she's been acting for a very long time. I actually played her mother in a movie called The Better Life, which is starring Demian Bichir. It came out in 2011, and it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. And I played her mom in that, and that's where I met her. And I was at I was at USC, and I was doing projects, and I was like, oh my God, she reminded me so much of me at her age that I said, I'm gonna write lead roles for her. And, you know, from day one, I was like, you're a lead, you're a lead, you're a lead. I planted that seed. And I was like, one day you're going to write, one day you're going to direct. You know, I kept telling you this stuff because one of the things that I love to do is inspire the youth. That's something I do. I give back to the community. I teach free classes over the summer for filmmaking in different communities like Boyle Heights, Chicago, even in Mexico, because it's something that I want to inspire the youth, you know, so that they know that they can do this too. So with Chelsea, when I was at USC, we did 2 short films. I wrote them, I directed them, she started them. And so when I was writing this, I always knew that I wanted her to play this character. So I wrote this actually for her. That's why the character her name is Chelsea. I was going to change it, but then I said, you know what? That's fine. Let's just leave the name Chelsea. Like, I love it. It was written for her. And then also I had written this other role for my son to play Jewel, but he was in school. So by the time we were shooting, he wasn't available anymore, which is why we needed to cast. And then the same thing with Gabriel Chavarria, who also blew up, and I'm just so excited for him. I had written the role of Gabe for him, and he was originally going to do it. He did the table read, and then he blew up. He, was doing Planet of the Apes, like really big movies, and he got really busy, But I love the fact that, I was able to write these characters for them, knowing that I would, be giving them lead roles, you know. So right now, like, I'm very proud of Chelsea. She's got a lot of great projects going on right now. She actually was the associate producer, so she helped us out on a lot of this stuff as well. And yeah, she's blowing up. I saw her in Shameless. What was it? What episode? Recently I saw her on there.
She was on the past season. She was on 5 episodes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what season, because I was on like 2 seasons ago. So I think I want to say she was on was it last season?
Yeah, but it was broadcast earlier this year.
Okay,
Either earlier this year or late last year. I think it was late last year. Late last year. I get, to be honest, the past 8 or 9 months have kind of blurred together in my head.
Exactly. I'm like, what day is it? I don't know. Yeah. But that's one thing that I will say. Like, I love working with people that you worked with before because you know who they are. And really, this community is very small. The actors that are working, and if they're available, you know, then they'll come and, you know, work with us if they can, and it all works out. But sometimes it doesn't, and you have to just go and cast, which is what we did. And we found some amazing up and coming talents. But yeah, she was always a part of it because it was actually written for her. That was my goal. I was like, I'm gonna make you lead, girl. Let's go.
Yeah, but one interesting part of the casting process was that when we had to hold auditions for, you know, because again we were, you know, like Gabe Charlie got too busy, so we had to start auditioning other actors for the roles. The interesting thing is when they would come in, the first read that they would, I don't like to give them any notes in the first read. I just want to see what they got from the material, see what they bring in before I give any notes. And all of them came with a stereotypical accent, attitude.
Even the wardrobe. I was like, why am I seeing flannel? I was like, no, it doesn't say flannel. We're not, what are you doing?
So we're like, no. You're not in a gang. You're just you. You're just typical, college student that, hanging out with his friends, having a good time. They're going to go party and get crazy because it's Chelsea's birthday. Like, you don't have to act any type of stereotype. Just be you. Right. Okay. But it was very eye-opening how the studio system has just trained our talent to be a certain way, and it's very sad and unfortunate. So that's why a movie like ours is so important to get out there and inspire, Latinos and people of color to just do mainstream movies that happen to have us, in lead roles. And actually we accomplished that so well that when we were pitching this movie to distributors, they were telling us this is not a Latino movie, and I was like, what?
Okay.
what? They're like, no.
They're like, where are the cholos? I'm serious. They did ask me. I was like, where? Not in this movie. I just in another movie, not here.
Even look at, so this from the financiers, like all the investors in this movie, and in the distribution of this movie are Latinos. Like, so it's like it's truly like an example of when Latinos come together, and they're not only Mexicans. They're like Salvadorians, Mexicans, from all over the
Colombia, Panama, Dominican Republic. Yeah.
Yes. So it's coming together with the same in supporting each other, and we were able to build something that it's mostly some of the crew members weren't, right. We have a diverse crew, but I mean, other than that, the cast and the financing and writing, producing, distribution has been all Latino. So
I will say back to the casting process, which is a really fun process. The people that were cast were the people that scared the hell out of us in the auditions, right? Because that's something you cannot fake. You cannot fake being scared. Yeah. And so that was a really interesting process because a lot of the actors that came in, they had never auditioned for a horror film. They hadn't had the opportunity. So it was interesting for them to try to match the tone of what was going on. And so we cast the ones that scared the hell out of us. And it was
Yeah, we have those audition tapes, so we will release those. We're gonna release those down the line as part of bonus and extra materials because there's some hilarious, and scary. Like they yeah. I remember with
Like remember when Chelsea and Chelsea was so scared because she was helping us with the chemistry reads that she literally ran under the table. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, where are you going? And she was underneath. She's like, he scared me. I mean, it was really like that. Like they were awesome.
Fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And I love, even though we're like low budget. I always love taping, the auditions just because, it just helps you look at them later and see, how the performer looks in camera and things, not only for the casting of the actor, but also just for ideas on the directing side as well. And a lot of times even for ideas for, certain phrases and things that they might come outlived at the time. So I think it's great to do those. And then when it comes to distribution, it's going to be a fun thing to let the audience see as part of this process that it was a lot of fun.
So how early in the process did you have Danny Trejo in mind for the sheriff?
Writing it. When
it was
Yel
always
and I
him.
got together.
It was always him.
It was when we were like, this is character, it has to be Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
We started shooting the movie without him. We had the offer out.
We refused to have casting because we always knew. I'm like, it's going to be Danny.
We did not have plan B.
Yeah.
We didn't have plan B. It was plan A. It is it. So we had the offer out, and we needed him. Like, it was on a Monday, and we needed him on to start working on Friday, and we weren't hearing back. And then Yel actually ran into him by some miracle of God. And she, I can tell you the story how that happened.
It was literally a dream come true. So in independent film world, I'm the producer. I'm the only person that can leave the set. We had rented this RV because it was really cold. So imagine you're in Topanga Canyon. It's 19 degrees. We're shooting 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and everybody was freezing. So I went and I got an RV. I'm like, okay, everyone can be in the RV. But there's really steep hills there, so we couldn't get the RV in there. So the only person that could leave was me. I had never driven an RV before. So imagine me driving, an RV.
Lola la trailera.
It was Lola la trailera. It was crazy. And so I had one of the crew members with me because I needed, a ride back. And I was exhausted. We're talking 18, 20-hour days. It's freezing, like I said. We're out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. And it was, Monday. We needed Danny on Friday. And like he said, the offer was out. We had talked to his awesome agent and his assistant. So we had already put it out there. So 3 days before, I had this dream. And in my dream, I gave him like a 30-second elevator pitch. And in my dream, he said yes. So I woke up and I called Luis and I'm like, oh my God, we got Danny. And he's like, you did? And we did. And I'm like, oh wait, I'm sorry, my bad. That was a dream. Because it felt so real. And I was like, oh my God, right? That was 3 days before this RV incident. So I had to take the RV back, right? I'm driving to Marina Del Rey. I'm so hungry that I stop at this restaurant and get some, I don't know what I ate. It was like a really good meal. It was a hearty meal. And I was like, okay, good. Now I'm ready to go to sleep. So I go back to the car. I open the door. I look over to the restaurant right next to the one that I was eating at. And who do I see? Lo and behold, is Danny Trejo. And I'm like, oh my God. Wow. I'm like, no way. So the guy that was with me is like, that's not Danny Trejo. Like, this was a white guy that was with me. He was like, that's just a Mexican man. And I'm like, oh, no. I know a Mexican man when I see one, and I know Danny Trejo when I see Danny Trejo. I'm like, that is Danny Trejo. I was like, I'm going in there. So I bolt in, right? And he's eating there with his daughter. And I'm like, okay, I can't, disturb a line while he's eating. Because I'm like, but he was, they were by themselves. So I'm like, okay, I need to tell him, all this stuff, right? Like in my dream. So all of a sudden, like, I go to the front and I order food and I'm asking the crew guy, I was like, what do you want to eat? And really loud. You have to imagine, like, this quiet place, right? It's only Danny, like, and us. He's like, we just ate. And I'm like, looking at him, like, if looks could kill, like, yeah, he would have been in Murder in the Woods Part 2. Really. He would have been in the sequel. Because I was like, I'll have a cookie and a soup. Right? Low budget. That's all I could afford. Mm-hmm. So I ordered that. So I'm waiting for my food. All of a sudden, Danny's daughter leaves. Danny goes to the bathroom. He comes out. Everybody that was working there, the chefs, the line cooks, everybody, the waitresses, like 30 people surround him. And I'm like, oh, great. There goes my opportunity, right? Because I thought I was going to have him to myself. So all of a sudden, I see him beeline to the door by himself. There's like 30 feet between him and the door. So I just go up to him. I give him my 30-second elevator pitch, and he's like, "When would you need me?" And I'm like, "Friday." And he's like, "Yeah, let me get back to you. You know, I'll call my agent." I'm like, "Yeah, we've been talking to her." So 2 hours later, no lie, what happens, Luis? The phone rings
Get the
and
call.
he's in. And
He's
I'm
in.
like,
Wow.
"Oh my God!" Like a dream, literally come true.
Yeah.
Like seriously, we
I mean,
manifested it.
Yeah, and talk about like we're talking about like the experience about USC is again. We've never, you know, independent world, like we've never done like contracts with, you know, big talent, right? And you know, you know, negotiating with agents, which, you know, Gloria, Danny's agent, she's been amazing,
Yeah.
super helpful, super supportive of this project, and Danny, obviously he's a godsend for our community. You know, if you've seen his documentary, I mean, I knew his story before the documentary, but I'm so glad that documentary came out because they get to see, you know, the transformation of this man and how good he's to our community and how good is to, you know, the inmate community and inspiring them and giving them hope to turn their life around. So for me, he's, you know, for Latinos and everybody, I think it's a great inspiration. And Gloria, she's been very supportive. However, I mean, again, at the end of the day, it's business, right? So it's like negotiating. So one of my professors at USC, Tony Etz, he's actually a CA agent. So I'm like, you know, they're super busy. I'm like, Tony, help me out. What, you know, like, what do I look for? Where do I, like, what, you know, what light items do I have to be worried about? You know, so he helped me out. And, you know, as a professor that he is, because they cannot do that, obviously, outside of that faculty. But he was really, really, really amazing. He just pointed out what to, you know, look for, and, you know, and ended up being great. So, again, those are the things that, yeah, USC, by having us be in touch with the real world at that level of executives and agents, really, really, for me, it was worth it.
That's actually an awesome story with Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
How was it like working with Machete?
Oh, Machete. I mean, the guy, as soon as he steps on set, I mean, he's like, I mean, I'm 6'3", right? So I'm pretty tall, you know, but, you know, his presence is taller than me. It's crazy. It's like, you know, so he's great. I mean, he's a professional. For me as a director, it was great being with a professional, a veteran like him and Soledad, Kurt and Rolando, which are, you know, they've done this so many times. They know what they're for. They do their thing. You give them a couple of notes, boom, you know, great. And then the newcomers, the up and coming actors, who again, they're really good and talented, but you know, you need to work a little bit more with them. And so it was a great experience for me as a director now to be able to know how to work with both, you know, big talent and up and coming talent, and what the difference is and what things to point out to each to accomplish, you know, what's best for the film. But, you know, Danny loves to work. He doesn't like to be, you know, in his green room or in his trailer. He wants to be home with his dogs, or he likes to be working, right? So it was great to have him, and because again, we had a limited budget, we just had to shoot him. So it was great because we had to literally shoot him back to back all his scenes and just, you know, all his stuff that we needed. And so it was great. It was great working with a legend like that. I feel blessed that, you know, that we had this opportunity. But yeah, overall, he's a great actor and mostly a great human being.
He made everybody step it up. I will say that it elevated everything to a whole different level, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, once he steps into the, you know, an actor like that, it's like, you know, we're a small indie film. All of a sudden this becomes, oh my God, this is like a Hollywood, or this is like a real production, right? So it does help. Everybody's like, you know, get, you know,
game. They got to bring their A+ game.
Yeah.
One of the many things that I loved about this film is some of the deaths, like in many slasher films, they happen off camera and you think you're not going to see them, but then you fully see that death in detail in the flashbacks. What made you approach some of these deaths in that way?
For me was again the practical, right? The show, right? They always hide them. So for me it was important. So how do we, again, movie magic, right? How can we make something like this look real on camera. So that from the beginning we were developing the story, that was important for both of us. For Yel from the story perspective, and for me from the visual perspective, to show these moments that a lot of movies hide. And again, it just gives it a little bit more production value, and I get to play with what I love, which again is movie magic.
So there's a plot line to this movie. It is a slasher film, but there's more story to it than what you would get, like, as far as the backstory. There's more backstory than your typical slasher movie. When you guys were like coming up with this story and coming up with everything, did you start off with the backstory and the details, or did you just start off making a regular slasher with characters that you know, and the story kind of filled itself out afterwards?
I love Agatha Christie. I will say that. There's a lot of influences. I love my whodunits. Like I said, my goal was really to write three-dimensional characters. And I know in slasher films, it's like, hey, it's not Shakespeare on the green. I've done Shakespeare on the green. I'm classically trained. I wanted to do a fun movie. And so I was like, okay, I want to make sure the story is structurally sound. So when I was coming up with the storyline, I was like, okay, I want to make sure that there's more to this, right? Because it works on different levels. It's one of those movies, like Luis was saying earlier, it's like you watch it once and you get it and it's a fun thrill ride and it's like, oh, awesome. But then you watch it again and you're like, wait, what? I missed that. Because I love those movies where you think something isn't planted, but it is. You just weren't paying attention, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things in there. You watch it 2 times, 3 times. It's one of those movies that you just keep finding different layers. And that was something that was done intentionally. Without giving any spoilers, it's kind of really hard to talk about that. Yeah. But I will say that just writing that was really fun because it's kind of like a puzzle, like a Guess Who. Those I used to love to play Guess Who. So I don't know if you know any of those games, but things like that, board game, Clue. I love Clue, murder mysteries, escape rooms. I love escape rooms. So anything of that nature, I was like, okay, let's bring some of those elements in, bring those tropes in so that people can have a fun time with the discovery of what's going on here.
Yeah, and that's what something that we talked at the development stage was that, we wanted something, like you said, this movie is not only a slasher, it has a deeper sense, and we wanted that, right? So that's something that we learned at USC. We wanted to make it deeper in many ways. Again, being both in a way very social justice conscious and very like we had a domestic violence thriller based on a true story that we were working on, so it was important to still keep, even though it's fun and everything, in the background have something, a solid foundation that would hold more than just a fun slasher, also some type of mystery that could be true to some people. So
with cultural references.
Yeah.
I love that. Represent.
So one detail that I also really liked was when characters when they really get in the thick of things and they're being killed off one by one, and the characters start making confessions, or they open up to other characters, and then that character points out, you don't make these confessions unless you know you're going to die. So I just wanted to get a little bit of your thought process behind that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think how can I word it so I don't give away any plot points, which is
it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. So that's a great question. How do you do that? So you do that with writing from an intuitive standpoint, right? So we all have this gut instinct of when there's energy there and it's off, and there's, whether it's evil or whatever it may be that's surrounding you at that moment, where it's a threat, right? It's a fight or flight moment that's happening. So that was something that I really delved into these characters. Like, I will say one of the auditions, it was so awesome because part of the audition process was also seeing how these actors would die. And I will always remember this one character, this person did get cast in it, but in the audition process, I saw his last, I thought I was watching him give his last breath in the audition. And the way that his hands just stopped and froze, like his eye, I'm like, are his pupils dilated? What is going on right now? Are they? It was so real. And the last thing he said was, "Mama." right? He called out for his mother. And so I literally am watching him, right? Terrified. I had all these emotions going through me. And I'm like, that's the last thing that I would do. I would call out for my mom too. So all those deaths were really thought about, like in that moment, like what would this character do? Because we all have different ways of coping with things, right? And so the fear takes over. Some characters, fight, some flight, some freeze. So psychologically, I was really delving into every character individually and really thought about how would they react to this, to a point where honestly some of these characters I'm like, man, have they really died in life before? Like, I don't know, it was so real. I'm telling you, it was.
Now the audition, we were like this actor has died before. We were like, he has.
Like, have you been shot before? Have you been shot before? Because it was just so real. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question without.
Definitely.
Without giving away any plot points. Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to this. This is like the first all Latino slasher film in the U.S. as far as I know. With movies like Get Out and Us with Jordan Peele making black horror a lot more mainstream. Do you see minority-driven horror or genre a big part of the horror genre moving forward?
I think. Well, to tell you the truth, we shot this in 2015. Right, so we were ahead of the game.
Way ahead.
Okay.
Before,
way ahead of the game.
Before we were trending, and it was cool to cast Latinos in lead roles. Because I just read the news, 2 Latinas just got cast in was it in Scream?
Scream 5, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I didn't even hear about that yet.
Yeah.
That just happened. So we're like, wow, that's awesome, right? We did this 5 years ago. So I think that Hollywood is finally like taking us seriously and going, wait, there's something here, right? Because Latinos love horror. We do. Yes. We love it, right?
Yeah.
We're the ones that are buying the box office tickets. So I think it's like finally it's slowly but surely changing. And I'm just so happy that we're able to be a part of that because, this is who we are and we've been doing it before, like I said, before it was trending to do it.
Yeah, we thought of this in 2014 and we shot it in 2015. And again, because the challenges of independent filmmaking, it took us a while. And again, at the time, we got a lot of no's. We premiered the movie in November 2017. It was an unfinished cut. We were just missing the color correction. So we finished the movie, proper in 2018, and we started doing more festivals. But again, we had that pushback about not being a Latino movie and all that. So that also, but again, now 2019, 2020, now it's become, okay, Latinos have a force, so let's listen to them, right? So that's why finally we get out here, right? One of the, after all these no's, we actually had to push ourselves and tell ourselves yes, so that's why we are, distributing this movie ourselves and putting it out there, which has been a great experience because now, from production, post-production to distribution, we cover all the angles now with this movie, which has been a great lesson for any other project that comes in the future.
So have either one of you seen From Dusk Till Dawn, the series that Robert Rodriguez did?
Yes, I have a lot of friends who have actually been on the show.
Oh. Yeah, I watched that, and there's so many phenomenal Latino actors in that series. And I thought about how rare it was and how sad it was that was so rare. And why didn't I see them in 100 other things? And I get that same feeling when I watch your movie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Robert for me is an inspiration. I've always, it's so funny because I also build computers, and he's an AMD fan and I'm AMD fan. So,
okay.
So that level, I'm like, building our own stuff. So he's been obviously a good inspiration for me as a director that went out and did it himself, and he doesn't take no for an answer, and he pushes. So just like Danny Trejo, I think Robert has done amazing things for our community, and also with like Spy Kids, making them being Latinos, no stereotypical family. So bringing Machete into our lives, right? And so I think for me, it's truly an inspiration, and I think for many Latinos and people of color, it's somebody that he knew what he wanted and went after it. And stories of success like him is what drive us to do those things.
With regards to getting this movie made, you mentioned a lot of the distributors thought this is not a Latino film because there's no like the stereotypes, cholos or gangbangers or anything dumb like that. And obviously, as you were telling earlier, Hollywood is actually starting to make some steps and strides towards more representation, more inclusivity. I still think there's a long way to go with regards to that. What advice would you give to young Latino filmmakers or any minority filmmakers who are trying to break into the business with movies that revolve around minority characters, but where the race is not the central theme of the movie? What advice would you give to filmmakers who are trying to break in like that?
So nowadays we have this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can make a movie with this now, right? So, and
really quick, for those listening, he is holding up a
cell phone, yeah. Cell phone. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a cell phone. So now, we have amazing cameras on cell phones now. So there's so many ways to tell stories right now. There's so many avenues and delivery and distribution networks from, IGTV to TikToks to there's so many outlets now to be creative and doing stuff. So we're in a great time for content creation. And how do you get known is obviously we're humans, and humans, we are, we have cycles and we follow structure, even though we feel we don't, we do. So it's obviously the structure is something very important. So story structure, why do things work? Why do people react to things, a certain way? And obviously the story, the characters, given depth. As long as you follow that and make content, good stuff, people are gonna eventually listen to you. And if they don't, then you do it yourself, right? Like we did. Like we've been, going through all this process, and then all this, no. So we have to give ourselves our yeses. And now it's so funny because I'm also handling the foreign sales with Michael, who's in London, and all of a sudden, all this, places that had said no to us, now they want us. But it's late because we already have our deal in place, and we're going to be out in VOD on September 18th and things like that. So it's a lot of times, when you're doing something innovative and new, they're not going to say yes until you prove them, right? So that's what we're doing right now. We're showing them that there's a need, there's a following for this type of content. We're inspiring Latinos. And for us, I think for YELYNA, that's our biggest, again, for me, seeing those faces and those eyes in the festival circuit, it just, it's like, if nothing happens to this movie, I mean, I felt satisfied as a filmmaker because I inspired somebody. So that was for me very, very, very important. I know for Yel as well, especially because, like she said, I mean, she works a lot with youth and in that world, preparing the next generation of Latino and people of color filmmakers. So,
and I always tell them, I'm like, querer es poder, right? Which means like, if you want to do it, if you love it, just do it. Because I always say, follow your passion. And people ask me, what do? I want to be an actor, right? People are waiting to be validated, to be told, hey, you're an actor. And I'm like, if you want to be an actor, act, right? If you want to be a director, direct. If you want to be a writer, write. What does that mean, though? You don't need that validation. We didn't wait. We were like, you know what? We're going to do this. So my advice to them would be, yes, use your cell phone, right? Take classes. Right now, everything's online. So there's a lot of classes, whether it's at a community college or, there's a lot of classes that you can take to learn the structure, right? To prepare yourself, because at the end of the day, it's like, it is show business. It's a business, right? Mm-hmm. So what are you selling, right? What is it that your brand is about? What is it, the story that you want to tell? Those are all things on the business side of it. But you can develop all your artistic sides by just writing a poem, writing a song, right? You can do that at home, right? If you love to play guitar and you want to do, be a composer, then write music. There's like so many things that we can do now, especially because we have the time, we're inside, right? And writing is one of those things that it's like, write a short film, write a play, right? Right now, we've been doing a lot of virtual readings So what that is just like this, Zoom, right? So you can give actors your script and they'll read it for you so you can hear it out loud. There's a lot of different things going on right now, right? Theater's going online. So all I would say is, honestly, if you want to do it, just go for it and be fearless, right? And if they're going to say no to you, that's fine. You know what? 300 no's, but you're going to get one yes, and all you need is that one yes. So I would say if it's something that you love, just go for it. Just do it, and you get better every time. I remember the first time I met with a manager, they were like, well, how many scripts have you written? Because you're not a real writer until you have 7 scripts written, right? So there's like all these rules or regulations, and people tell you all these things. My advice to you is if it's what you love, just go ahead and do it. And eventually you're going to get to that point where you're like, wow, I have the 7 scripts that this person said, you know, I wasn't a writer unless I had that. I remember telling my mom, when I was writing, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go, you know, get my master's and I get to write. And she was like, well, you know, you don't need that to be a writer because you've been a writer. She said that to me. She's like, you've been writing since you were 7. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I still went and got the story structure and all that because I wanted to prepare. But sometimes we're just waiting for that validation. So I would just say, you know, if it's in your heart, if it's something that you're passionate about, get together with your friends, whether it's Zoom online just like this, and just start planning and do it. Go for it.
So you mentioned that this film is self-distributed, but usually to get into theaters and have a big release on VOD and everything, you need a bigger distributor backing you. So how did you accomplish this doing it yourself?
So in this industry, there are many layers. Believe it or not, a lot of these distributors are just middlemen. They have, you know, the aggregators are actually the ones pushing the content into the platforms. They have the relationships with the platforms. So yeah, I cannot go directly to a platform because I don't have a relationship with them. However, you go to the person closest to them and you cut all the fat in the middle. So that's what I've done is I've gone to that person who's going to get us into the platforms, already has the relationships. And, you know, so on that side, and then on the theatrical side, we also, so previously we actually booked. So I went to CinemaCon and I learned the whole theatrical distribution business. And I met a lot of the buyers and a lot of the theater. I mean, for me, that experience at CinemaCon was amazing. You have all these theater owners there. You know, the big chains, the little chains, the mom and pops, you know, it's like all America comes together. So you meet all this diversity of theater owners that they're all so passionate about, you know, film and about, you know, theaters and, you know, the right way of watching movies, which I still believe. I mean, getting your movie at home is great, especially in the current times. But I mean, the theatrical experience, I mean, we're humans. We're meant to be connected, right? Interconnected, you know, so it's like the theatrical movie experience with a lot of people around you, especially a scary movie, especially comedy, those play so well, you know, in a communal sense. So
and at the drive-in, what a nostalgic, right, experience.
Yeah,
kind of movie. I mean, it's just like goes perfectly.
Perfect for a slasher movie.
Yes.
Yep. So we started booking theaters again prior to the pandemic, and we were going well. But then because of this last minute thing with the drive-ins, we brought in a booker who already has those relationships, further relationships with those buyers, right? So that's how we were able to make it faster, because to do it, you know, without those relationships, it would have taken more time, like it was taking. But then we had to literally cut it right after COVID. It was like, boom, like, no, you know, the financiers were like, it's too risky. No, we're out of the theatrical, you know, the theatrical window. And again, this opportunity came along, and she's somebody that has already those relationships that she was able to get us to market quickly. So but again, it's like, you got to go to the closest connection. You got to cut all the fat. Right. Okay. But again, also my marketing back before being a filmmaker, I was in marketing. I started as a graphic artist and also sculpture. So everything I love, like I said, blood and stuff, working with my hands. But also, you know, I was a graphic designer. I've designed websites. So the website that we have right now, I did. You know, the graphic, the poster, like all the graphic elements that you see right now of the movie, were done by me, literally with my hands. So having that knowledge of marketing obviously helps because I'm able to do it myself. I don't have to hire a marketing company to do this for me. I don't have to hire some graphic artist to do this for me. Our social media manager is helping a lot. You know, you give them the look and the assets, and then they move them around to fit the different dimensions. But you know, the whole creative side on the graphic arts and it has been also done by me. So that's how also I was able to do this, because I have that experience of marketing and graphic design, and I'm able to make something look a certain way. So those are kind of the key elements how, you know, I was able to pull this off on the distribution side.
That's awesome.
So before we go, this is playing in theaters this weekend, correct? In drive-in theaters.
Yes. So right now, tonight is our last night in Southern California drive-in theaters.
Okay.
Because we have, you know, we have a huge, again, our budget is minimal for the distribution. So we're competing against $10 million P&A, like, you know, $10 million marketing
minimum.
budget.
That's the minimum.
Yeah. So obviously those films have more, you know, we've known about them for a longer time. So they're more top of mind on the buyer side. So, you know, so that was, you know, again, as an independent filmmaker, it's a challenge. You know, when you go out in theaters and you launch, it's like especially around COVID times, right? Everybody was expecting that those movies, you know, they've been moving. You know, they were first going to come out in June, then July. So everybody was expecting them to move, and now they're not moving. So, you know, so we're getting really heavy competition, especially this weekend. This weekend, there's 24, 26 films opening this weekend, which is like not even Thanksgiving, you know. So it's, again, COVID times is not your typical time. It's a day at a time. It's literally
this weekend, Luis, we're in Chicago. We're all over the place this weekend.
Yeah, we're in Vegas, so we're up in Maya Moctezuma. He's been very supportive of us, and you know. I met Mocte like 3 years ago, and he's always told me, whenever you have a movie, we'll play it in Maya. So he was great. So we're opening Maya Cinemas in Las Vegas, because the ones in California are not allowed to be open yet by law. But we're going to be in Las Vegas.
We're doing Texas, Indiana. We're in Vegas.
Minnesota.
I mean, the list. If you want a full list, you just can go to the website, murderinthewoodsmovie.com, and we're updating it as we go, because it's a daily thing. It's like, is this theater open? Is it still open? You know, so we're adding as we go. But this weekend we have, do you know how many that is, Luis?
This weekend we have about 30. And we're probably going to expand hopefully to 35 or 40 by next weekend. We know already, which we're going to update today. We're just waiting for the site, to the theater site to update it. We're going to populate the newest ones that we're going to be on of the weekend of the 28th.
Okay.
Which is going to be more in Texas, more in Nevada, more in Las Vegas, and yeah, Indiana. We're also in a drive-in in Virginia, in a theater in Virginia, Minnesota. We're in a lot of theaters in Minneapolis. So there's a lot of horror fans there. So I mean, yeah. So it's been, again, it's a day by day. It's
kind of traveling around the country that a way a lot of older horror movies used to. They wouldn't release all at once. It would like kind of like travel around the country, and different people.
That's how I feel. I'm like, the circus is in town. I'm in Chicago, and I'm like, all right, the show is here, guys. Let's go.
Is there any chance, because we're based in Southern California, I mean, the podcast vary, but we're based in Southern California. Is there any chance that it might circle back around to this area, or is that
we are really pushing for it. So I mean,
if you guys call the theaters and ask for it,
that would help.
Tag them on social media and ask them to bring it back. Sure, why not? They might.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's also an option on your website where you can request it to come to your city. Yeah. So everybody go on the Murder in the Woods website and request it to come to your city.
Yeah, request it. Your request is that I'll send it to the theaters, you know, and just call them up, you know, show up, ask for the movie. That's how, you know, if we create demand for it, if you know, the audience, you know, the likes, it comes together and ask for it, they'll definitely bring us back, because at the end of the day, they're the ones with the dollars, right? So.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, money talks, right? So if our goal is to come back, but right now this weekend was very competitive. So again, this right now, nobody was expecting all this bunch of literally like not even the people they're working in the industry in the buying side and the selling side knew what was going on. So again, it's been very very fluid times.
Yeah. There's a
For
restructuring
everything.
happening right now in Hollywood for sure. It's restructuring itself. So we're at the forefront of it. I'm like, hey, we have a horse in the race. I'm grateful for that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So now that you've done a great horror film, do you both want to dip into the horror genre more?
I love the horror genre because it's fun, right? So again, it's the slasher part of it I love. So however, we both, I believe, we both like also to tell true stories and lessons, right? So so it's both. I want to keep doing horror because it's a lot of fun, and I grew up seeing it, but also want to transition to other genres, action or genres that inspire, true, based on true stories, things like that. And again, it's kind of like, everybody like wants to put you in a box, in Hollywood. And, my goal it's one of my inspirations is like Spielberg is one of those directors that no matter what he does, right, he does it well. And he,
Yeah.
So that's my goal is to be able to, because I love experimenting with new things too. So
Although everybody does keep asking if there's gonna be a sequel, no spoilers, but everyone's like asking for it, and I'm like, who knows, right?
Yeah,
Maybe it's already written, maybe it's not. I don't know. I can't say, right? But I will say that I love discovering Scream Queens. That is something that I'm just so happy about. Right? We have Catherine Toribio, we have Jeanette Samano, and we have Chelsea Rendon. And to me, all three of them, they are Scream Queens. So that's something that that I'm very happy to be able to write. And who knows if there's a sequel? I don't know. Ask the writer.
I must say that even the best slasher films have some throwaway characters that are just there to be killed. But I think every one of these characters has something that stands out about them, and you feel like you know them. And I commend you for that.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, so I really love the film. Before the audience goes, I want to know where could we follow each of you at? Where can we follow you at, YELYNA?
I am on Instagram and on Facebook, and my name is YELYNA De Leon, and that's YELYNA. I have to spell it because otherwise you'll never be able to guess. At YELYNA De Leon is where you can find me. Also, my website, YELYNADeLeon.com, has all the info on all the projects that I'll be working on, as well as where the circus is in town.
Okay. What about you, Luis?
I'm on Instagram. I'm at Luis, LUIS.IGA. On Twitter, I'm at Luis Iga without the dot, just LUISIGA. And also on Facebook, I'm at LUISIGA.
And we'll put links and everything on the
we'll put it in the description
podcast,
so people don't have to guess how to in case they didn't hear it.
Yeah, and also in Murder in the Woods, where you want to find anything about the movies, murderinthewoodsmovie.com. We have links to our social media there. And again, if you watch the movie, just put up a post about it and tag us, and we'll acknowledge you. We'll thank you for it because right now we need your support. And like you said, you get back to Southern California, it would be great if we get the audiences.
Yes, that would be awesome. And I love the horror community. They're very loyal. So I just want to say thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you.
We're excited for people to check it out and give us some feedback, give us some reviews. Go to Rotten Tomatoes, give us, show the love and support because we really need you guys. And I hope you have a fun ride, whether it's at the drive-in or on VOD September 18th.
We'd like to thank you both for coming on. It was an honor to talk to both of you.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You both have a lovely day.
You too.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Horror show exclusive.
So everybody go see Murder in the Woods. It's a really fun slasher.
Yes, and go to their website and request it if it's not playing near you. Next week, we will be back with another interview with Mitch McLeod, the director
of Silhouette,
currently playing on Amazon Prime. Till next week, folks, happy horror.
Happy horror.